Welcome back. I'm Simon Carver, here with Lachlan Reed, and today we're unpacking World Liberty Financial, or WLFI. And right up top, this is one of those crypto stories where the name, the politics, and the tech all kind of arrive at the party at the same time.
Yeah, and that can get messy fast. But the basic setup is actually pretty straightforward. WLFI is described as a DeFi protocol, so we're talking decentralized finance, with this stated aim of linking traditional banking and blockchain rails.
Right. And DeFi can sound intimidating if you've only heard it in very online, very breathless terms. But at its simplest, it's trying to recreate familiar financial functions: lending, borrowing, earning interest, using blockchain-based systems instead of the usual bank plumbing.
It's a bit like taking the services you'd expect from a bank branch and rebuilding them as software. Maybe not the stale lollies in the reception bowl, sadly, but the core stuff. You put assets in, you might borrow against them, you might earn yield. That's the ecosystem pitch here.
And sitting inside that ecosystem is the WLFI token. This is important. The article frames WLFI as a governance token. So the token is not just a badge or a collectible. The key function described is voting power. Holders get a say in governance decisions.
Yeah, governance token means the token is meant to help steer the thing, sort of like owning a vote in the rules of the club, not just a drink coaster with the club logo on it. Terrible analogy. Actually, no, not terrible. Pretty serviceable.
No, I like it. The coaster analogy stays because it helps separate this from a lot of crypto projects that are mostly about hype or price movement. At least in the framing we've got here, WLFI is supposed to be tied to a broader financial platform.
And that broader platform matters. Lending, borrowing, earning interest, those are useful, concrete hooks. They give people a reason to ask, okay, what is this token actually for inside the system? If it's governance, then the value proposition is partly about influence over how the protocol evolves.
Though I think it's fair to say governance tokens can feel a bit abstract to regular people. If you've never voted on a protocol proposal, it can sound like being told, good news, your toaster now participates in municipal planning. You're like, okay, but what does that mean for breakfast?
Exactly. And maybe that's why the banking bridge language is so central. It's trying to make DeFi sound less like a weird internet side quest and more like infrastructure people already understand. Savings, loans, interest, that sort of thing. Familiar front door, newer machinery out the back.
So Chapter 1 version, if we're boiling it down. World Liberty Financial is presented as a DeFi protocol designed to connect banking and blockchain. WLFI is the governance token that gives holders voting power. And the bigger promise is an ecosystem where users can lend, borrow, and earn interest.
Nice and clean. Of course, once you add the branding and who's attached to it, mate, that's when the easy bit ends.
Yeah, because the next layer here isn't just technical. It's political and cultural and honestly kind of theatrical. The Trump family's involvement matters because it changes how people read the whole project. It stops being just another DeFi protocol and becomes a signal-heavy public brand.
Too right. When a family that well known is attached, people don't see neutral software. They see influence, access, audience, maybe leverage. Whether you like that or hate it, it's not background noise. It's part of the product story.
And the article seems to suggest that this connection may do more than attract attention. It may also shape how people think about regulatory positioning, not in a guaranteed magic wand way. We should be careful there, but in the sense that political proximity can be read as an advantage.
Yeah, that's the tailwinds point. The article frames WLFI as potentially benefiting from a friendlier regulatory climate, and even raises the possibility of a banking charter. Now that's a big phrase. A banking charter isn't a novelty number plate you bolt on for style. It's serious institutional territory.
Exactly. If that possibility is part of the conversation, then WLFI isn't being pitched merely as a token with vibes. It's being cast as something that could move closer to regulated financial infrastructure. Again, that's the article's framing, not a done deal.
And that leads to a really useful contrast the article makes. WLFI versus meme coins like $Trump and $MAGA. Those meme coins trade heavily on symbolism, identity, and hype. WLFI, at least as presented here, is trying to sit in a different lane.
Right. Same broad political orbit, very different implied function. Meme coins are often like campaign merch for the blockchain era. High visibility, emotionally charged, but not necessarily tied to some deeper financial machinery. WLFI is framed as infrastructure, governance, financial services, maybe regulation.
It's the difference between a souvenir stubby holder and a set of plumbing plans. One is about signaling you're in the tribe. The other says, we're building pipes. Now look, pipes are less exciting at a barbecue, but they matter more if you want water in the house.
That's such a wonderfully Australian sentence. But yes, that's the distinction. And it matters because crypto projects often get flattened together. People hear token, they assume speculation first, everything else later. The article is pushing back on that by saying WLFI should be read less like a meme asset and more like a long-term financial platform.
Though there's also a tension there, isn't there? Because the same branding that creates visibility can also make the project harder to evaluate calmly. People might overcredit it because of the family name, or dismiss it for exactly the same reason.
Yes, and that tension is key. The brand may create momentum, and the regulatory story may create perceived advantage. But those things don't erase the need to ask what the system actually does and how it would work. So the article's second chapter, basically, is political branding isn't incidental here. It's central to how WLFI is being differentiated from pure meme coins and to why people talk about regulatory tailwinds and even a possible banking charter.
Which brings us to the bigger swing, what all this infrastructure is supposedly trying to unlock.
And this is where the article zooms out. The bigger bet isn't just one token or one protocol. It's the idea of crypto infrastructure, especially tokenized real-world assets in something called the USD1 stablecoin.
Yeah, tokenized real-world assets is one of those phrases that can make normal humans quietly back away from the conversation. But the basic idea is taking assets from the regular financial world and representing them on blockchain rails. That's the bridge concept again. Real stuff, digital wrapper. Easier movement inside crypto systems.
Nicely put. It's a bit like putting a shipping label and tracking number on something that used to move through a private warehouse with opaque paperwork. Same underlying item, but now it can potentially travel through a different system with different rules and visibility.
And the USD1 stablecoin fits into that infrastructure vision. Stablecoins, generally speaking, are about creating a blockchain-based asset designed to hold a steadier value. In this article, USD1 seems to be part of the broader ecosystem play, not just a side accessory.
Right, because if you're building lending, borrowing, and other financial activity on-chain, a stable unit can become pretty important. You need pieces that feel less like roller coasters and more like floorboards.
Good line. Less roller coaster, more floorboards. Stealing that. The article also presents insiders and staking requirements as stabilizing forces, and I think the logic there is pretty intuitive. If key participants are locked in, and if staking means tokens are committed rather than constantly flipping around, that can be framed as a way to reduce chaos.
Yes, the story being told is that concentration among insiders and requirements around staking could make the system less twitchy, less vulnerable to every passing gust of speculation, sort of like asking everyone on a small boat to sit down before it leaves the dock.
But, and this is the bit you can't just brush past, the same features can raise concentration risks. If influence is clustered, then stability for one person might look like control to someone else. I always get caught on that. The thing that calms the market can also narrow the room.
Exactly. That's the balancing act the article seems interested in. On one hand, there is a serious-sounding infrastructure thesis. DeFi linked with banking, tokenized real-world assets, a stablecoin, governance, maybe a more durable framework than the usual hype cycle. On the other hand, there is uncertainty about execution, about how power is distributed, about whether regulatory advantage materializes the way supporters might hope.
And maybe that's the fairest read. Not this is definitely the future, not this is just a gimmick, but this is a big bet on crypto growing up into actual financial plumbing. Whether that plumbing ends up robust or a bit leaky, well, that's the live question, isn't it?
It is, and I like ending there because it keeps the focus on structure, not just spectacle. WLFI in this telling is interesting because it tries to combine political branding, governance tokens, and infrastructure ambition in one package, and that creates both promise and risk.
Nice one. We'll leave it there for today. If you've been hearing crypto terms fly past and thinking, crikey, even a kangaroo could trip over this, you're not alone.
We'll keep puzzling through it with you. Thanks for listening, Lachlan. Always a pleasure.
Likewise, Simon. Catch you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.